the Hebrew Bible as we know it today. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. And most folks know the New Testament was entirely composed in Greek. But the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, was not. It was originally composed overwhelmingly in Hebrew, but some parts were composed in Aramaic. And around the middle of the 3rd century BCE, people started translating the books of the Hebrew Bible into Greek so they could be better understood by Jewish folks who were living in Greek-speaking regions. And we now usually refer to this collection of Greek translations as the Septuagint. And the Septuagint frequently differs from the Hebrew Bible that we know today based on the Masoretic text, the traditional manuscript of the Hebrew Bible. Some of those differences are a result of what we call translator exegesis, and that's where the translator has interpreted the text in an idiosyncratic way, or a way that differs from how we would interpret the Hebrew today. Some of those differences are a result of a variant source text. In other words, the Hebrew manuscript that they had in front of them that they were translating into Greek didn't line up perfectly with what we have today. Sometimes what they had in front of them was a more original version. Sometimes it was a less original version. So there are places in the New Testament where the authors are quoting from the Hebrew Bible, but they're quoting mistranslations. So for instance, in Acts 15, verses 16 and 17, we have the Jerusalem Council drawing to a close. And James is ostensibly quoting from the prophets to seal the deal. And he's quoting from Amos 9, verses 11 through 12. Kinda. It's actually probably a mixture of a few different passages. However, he's definitely quoting from the Greek. And the Greek understood the Hebrew in a very different way, a way that doesn't result from going directly from the Hebrew, which means that the author of Acts 15 was not actually reporting what James actually would have said during the Jerusalem Council. The author is composing this story himself based on the Greek translation. Here's how we know this. In the quotation from Acts 15, 16 through 17, James has the prophets say, "In that day I will rebuild the tabernacle of David." Then he goes on to refer to the remnant of humanity that seeks the Lord. Now, this is not what's in the Hebrew of Amos 9, 11 through 12. It actually talks about the restoration of the booth or the tabernacle of David so that they might possess the remnant of Edom. So in Amos 9, this is about the reestablishment of the Davidic kingdom, and this other kingdom that had been conquered by David and then lost would be restored, specifically the kingdom of Edom. And it refers to those who were called by the name of Adonai. In other words, at one point, the kingdom of Edom had been under the purview of Israel's patron deity, Adonai. So why the difference? Well, the Greek translation, either intentionally or unintentionally, it's not clear, changes Edom to Adam, which changes the remnant of the nation of Edom to the remnant of humanity. And in the Hebrew, the characters are very, very similar. It also changes the verb, yirash, which means to possess, to darash, which means to seek, a difference of a single letter that could appear similarly in some scripts. And so instead of having the booth, the tabernacle of David, possessing the remnant of Edom, we have the remnant of Adam becoming the subject of the verb to seek. So the remnant of Adam will seek. And in the Greek, there's no object of that verb to seek. They're just going to seek. Seek what? Doesn't say. And so the author of the book of Acts seems to have added a direct object, the Lord, so that those who seek the Lord will be called after the name Adonai. And so the Hebrew of Amos 9, 11 through 12 has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to James's quotation, because James's quotation is all about extending the gospel to the Gentiles. But the Hebrew of Amos 9 isn't about that. The quotation of Amos 9, 11 through 12 only works in the context of Acts 15 in the mistranslated Greek. Now, there are a lot of scholars who have argued that James was intentionally doing this, that James had the authority to alter the translation, or that this was an inspired mistranslation. And if you want to go down that dogmatic road, you're welcome to, but the reality is that this was a mistranslation that the author of the book of Acts relied on and put that mistranslation into the mouth of the brother of Jesus, who would have spoken Aramaic and probably some Hebrew, but probably not enough Greek to be comparing the different translations and deciding which version he would prefer to quote at the Jerusalem Council. And so there is a sense in which there are parts of the Bible that are translations of translations. And as a result, there are changes that have made their way into the text. It's not what most people think, though. It's a result of the authors of the New Testament relying on the Septuagint, or the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, even where it diverges from what we know the Hebrew said. Whether that was intentional or unintentional, it is a difference.